Let's face it, business technology is frustrating and complex. So how do you make sure it works for your team? To make IT right, start the discussion at go-domain.com. You're listening to Discussions by Domain, a podcast for business leaders. Our discussions may be with people you've probably heard of before, but the majority of our guests are in the trenches, professionals like you and I, with the same challenges and struggles of keeping up in the Northeast. They're implementing strategies, overcoming hurdles. They're leading the fastest growing businesses in our region. My name is Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Computer Services, and the host of this show. When I'm not talking with business leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of Domain and the ups and downs of our own growth journey, as we intend to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome to another episode of Discussions by Domain. This is Lorin Fisher, Service Manager over at Domain Computer Services. And today we're going to talk about how do you lead an IT emergency room? And what brought this on actually is that Lorin's held multiple leadership positions throughout Domain. I think the most of anybody, to be honest with you. So what I kind of wanted to do is he had done a Monday morning presentation for us, probably two within like the last 6 months. Yeah. And both of those had spoken to us about like, we should get Lorin on and talk about some of these things. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is, and this comes from your military background, by the way, Coast Guard over here, was how do you handle this emergency room, the team, the leadership piece of it, and how does that compare and differ to like your VCIO role as, leading strategy and whatnot. So, Lorin, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Before we get into this, I think that we are going to make sure that this is episode number 50. So congrats on that.
Very cool. Congrats on all the success with it thus far.
Thank you. There's only going to be 150.
Listen, I'll take it.
By the way, in terms of sponsorships, we're trying to get sponsored over here. We were just out in Phoenix at our peer group, IT Nation Evolve, as some of you know, and Duo came out and gave us some bowling. We went bowling with them. They were very good at bowling.
Very good.
Kicked all of our butts.
Yep.
They gave us some pretty cool swag. So Duo, if you're listening, we'd love for you to sponsor this podcast or give us more free stuff. That'd be pretty cool.
We like free.
Awesome. So let's get into this. Before we talk about the topic, why don't you give us a little bit of overview on yourself, kind of your career path, which is pretty interesting, different than most, and what you're doing nowadays at Domain.
All right, yeah. So we're in year number 9 right now here at Domain. Right out of the service, 6 years active duty to Domain. Started making my bones like most people do in IT. We start on the service desk. Yeah. Level 1, we're resetting passwords. Dealing with the more mundane, monotonous tasks.
Correct.
In the trenches, if you will. So from there, went network admin. From network admin was the network admin team lead. From there, went VCIO.
So real quick, give them a little bit because they may not know. What is network admin real quick?
So network admin, I'm out at the client sites, kind of maintaining that relationship, doing tech work while there. But more so the liaison, the on-site presence of the IT department, interfacing with the end users.
Which is something different that Domain does, right? We run into a lot of companies that they get to a certain size or they partner with an IT company. It's mostly remote or 99% remote. And then they get to a certain size and level where they're like, wow, I'd really like some of that network admin. They don't put a name to it, but they'd like that on-site presence again.
And I think that's why we've been so successful at Domain is because unlike most IT providers, we're not on-site adverse.
Yeah.
You mention on-site to most MSPs and they're like, oh my God, no, like whatever we can do to not go on-site, let's do that. Whereas we see that's a value proposition. And frankly, it just strengthens the relationships that we have with our clients. So that's one of the most important roles that we have here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then so from there, you moved up to VCIO or Virtual Chief Information Officer. Talk to us about that role.
So that was an interesting one. A lot of learning, to get to that point because you're essentially you're outsourced C-suite at that, for that company. sometimes they can't afford the salary of a full-fledged CIO or CTO, so they bring in the consultant. And what you're doing is exactly what a full-time CIO or CTO would do. Budget, strategy. How do we take your business and the current technology landscape, marry the two, and get you going in the direction that you want to be going?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then from there to not even to your current role. You went somewhere else first too.
So we started a little program called Apprentice IT, the first IT apprenticeship in the state of New Jersey.
Congrats, that was awesome.
Yep. There's a lot of great work that went into that. A lot of vision from Rashad and Michelle, kind of seeing the evolution of college students and also seeing the trajectory that our industry was heading and the negative job gap that exists still to this day.
Yeah.
And, what do we do? How do we get around this? And we get around this by developing this program, focusing on community college students in IT fields of study and bringing them and giving them some on-the-job training. Turned it into the full-time apprenticeship program, and here we are a couple of years later.
And from so everybody understands Lorin's perspective, going from literally engineer one, day one, out of the service to VCIO, managing and leading customers' infrastructure and technology needs, then switching hats, per se, and going to working with community colleges, faculty, leadership at colleges, the State Department, all these different things. So you've done it all now, and
I like to think so at this point.
It's been a good ride. And then they ask you to come over to be the service manager, right? So kind of all the way back to square
full circle,
one.
man. Full
That's
circle.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So talk to us a lot about that. You did a presentation on, and why we're calling this the IT emergency room, right? It's we break down that network admin into proactive on-site work.
Yep.
And then we talk about service desk as that reactive entity that's behind the scenes remote. And it's usually a problem. I have a problem. I'm raising my hand via phone call, email, portal, and now I need some help. And usually it's a priority for me. And your team is set with the task of understanding those requests and priorities and setting the difference between urgency and importance. So you did a presentation on this. Can you talk to us about a little bit about urgency and importance, the difference between the two?
Sure. So what I like to go by with urgency and importance is the Eisenhower principle.
Okay.
So Dwight Eisenhower, pretty famous person in United States history.
Yeah.
There was a principle that was named after him. Basically, your y-axis is urgency, your x-axis is importance, and you're basically trying to eliminate things in the bottom right corner out of your life, things that I don't need to do.
Yeah.
And you want to stay focused on the important, not necessarily the urgent, but the important, because urgent isn't necessarily created by you. Urgent is usually created by somebody else.
Correct.
And you have your own things to do, your own important things to do. So it's really a fine line. Being helpful, being a giver, but yet not constantly being bombarded and overrun with.
Yeah, and one of the things, I think it was that top right corner, where it's important and not urgent, and that's the box where we see the most growth as ourselves as individuals or as companies, but it's usually the box we spend the least amount of time in.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Exercise goes in that box.
Yeah.
I think we all, cognitively understand the importance of exercising, and it's tough. I mean, you're at the gym at 5:30
a.m. Yeah. Yep. 4:45 wake up, 5:15 leave the house, 5:30, 6:30. Yeah, it's not. I'd rather sleep.
But it's important.
It is important.
But it's not urgent.
Correct. It could easily get pushed.
It could easily get pushed for something else. So it's really understanding that balance. And, that's a tough thing to teach because people often confuse urgent and important as the same thing when they're really polar opposites.
Exactly. So your team specifically, they're getting hit with urgent requests all day long. And then you specifically have designed frameworks of let's define the urgency and let's match it to an importance level, and then that's how you guys are basing response times and everything like that.
100%. So you used emergency room earlier.
Yeah.
It's very similar. What we call it is the triage process. When a ticket comes in, we're triaging it, no different than a patient walking into an emergency room.
Yeah.
The guy with the gaping hole in his chest is gonna get seen,
First.
before the person who's like, "Hey, I have pain in my knee right now."
Yeah.
Okay, you go have a seat. We're gonna get to you. You're still important,
Yeah.
but it's not critical that I get to you right now. This guy's losing blood.
Yeah.
He needs to be seen by a doctor stat. And it's a similar process. Somebody calls in and says, "Hey, my printer at my desk isn't working, but I can print to the network printer fine." Okay, cool. You have a workaround. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tickets in the queue. We're going to get to that. Versus, hey, nobody in the company's got an email in the last 9 minutes. Or
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and expedite that, move that to the front of the line, because now you're talking real consequences, real life consequences. How much money do you lose per minute being down?
Yeah, and which I think ties back into, and your journey is so interesting because it ties directly back into that CIO role, right? You now understand business impact and how technology affects business from all different angles, and that helps you and your team communicate back to people, but also set the importance on your side. Like, yeah, if the entire organization's without email for 10 minutes and that goes to 4 hours, we're gonna have a serious problem on our hands. So how do we fix that?
100%. To keep on the medical analogies, VCIO, I'm a general practitioner. I'm the guy that you're going to for the last 20 years.
Yep.
Knows you inside and out what to do. But when you go to the service desk, that really is ER. It's transactional. I don't know your medical history. I don't know anything about you.
Yep.
We're just, it's an in and out transaction process. Maybe I'll see you again. Maybe I won't.
Yeah.
Likelihood in managed services is, I'm going to see you again, but you're not taking that deep dive into the environment or their background.
Exactly. You probably got 10 minutes, 15 minutes to figure something out, understand the environment, and then boom, let's act on it.
Yeah.
Or less.
Or less. Depends on what it is.
Another question I wanted to ask you about is how do you help your team set expectations or clear expectations with customers, right? As you mentioned, everybody walks into that emergency room, and if they're walking in, that means they know they have a problem and they want to get it done as soon as possible. But once again, there's different priorities, there's different levels of importance. How do you coach your team or help your team understand setting expectations to those patients, let's call them?
It's hard. I will say that dispatch, which are the team that's taking the tickets via email or phone call, have the toughest job on the service desk because they're the front line, they're the face and the voice for that first interaction of the ticket. And generally when you're having IT problems, you're not getting happy and smiling on the other end. Somebody's frustrated. They can't do what they need to be doing right now because of some technology malfunction. So naturally they're, maybe a little agitated.
Exactly.
I completely get it.
Yeah.
And it's tougher to deal with those people. So what I tell them to do is get on the same side of the table as them. If they're having problems with Comcast, their internet's bouncing, get on the side of the table with the client, be like, man, that internet service provider, they're killing us. Let me get on the phone with them. I'm going to take care of this for us right now. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Align yourself with the client because truly you are on the same team. So you should verbalize that and not make it seem like they're calling Walmart, whom they have no relationship with.
Yeah.
We have that
exactly. Or making that request seem like it's outlandish or how could you be experienced? That's stupid. You don't want to do that. You want to be I understand your problem. I'm getting to this side of the table with you of let's solve this together. And then I guess the client then feels like you've bought in.
Yeah. And that's key. You want them to buy in, but it's, and it's tough because service desk it's that nonstop all day. So, you learn through a lot of repetition, but, at the same time, you take your fair share of beatings along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's got to take a certain type of individual to be able to handle that day in and day out.
Requires some thicker than usual skin for sure. And it also requires the ability to be able to smile through the phone regardless of what's happening.
Yep. I can't love that more, just because back in the original sales days, right, they literally, when you're reaching out via cold call or calling, they literally would tell you to smile even though you know the other person can't see it, because they could feel it through the phone.
Absolutely.
Which I remember you bringing up in your presentation. I was like, yes, there it is.
No, but it's so true. I mean, when you are on the receiving end as the customer, I'm sure you can recall great conversations you've had with customer service, and god awful ones that you've had with customer service. And the ones that were good was probably because there was some levity. And obviously it was resolution was the most important thing, but getting the resolution, it probably didn't feel like a painstaking process of walking on coals to get there.
Exactly. It felt like there was a human on the other side that could walk me through that process. Yeah, no, you're right. With all these different leadership roles, what is the biggest difference between leading a customer as an outsourced C-suite versus leading a service desk and that emergency room?
It's very different.
Of course.
No, it's extremely different. They require different skill sets, to be honest. Obviously, CIO, you really need to be the guy that can see the entire picture at one time and figure out where all the pieces need to go, versus service desk, where you're managing a puzzle with 100 different pieces at once, and you're just trying to find the corners and start building from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And you're also managing more process.
Okay.
On the service desk side, because without process, service desk would fail. Who's triaging? What order should this be going in? Who's getting what next? Yeah. Where does all this kind of fit? CIO is challenging in its different ways, because you're going up and speaking to the C-suite, and you're having really consequential conversations of, what is the future of my business this year, next year, 5 years from now? How much do we need to budget for next year? Hey, my budget got reduced by 40%, but I know we need new infrastructure. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Both are challenging, but present very different challenges. I enjoyed both. I can't say that I enjoy one more than the other. They're different.
They're different. It's completely different. So when you're looking for, and you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but when you're looking for team members for service desk and that emergency room feel, what are some of the characteristics you're looking for your team to have?
Grit, number one.
Okay.
I can teach someone IT.
Yeah.
Grit is one of those things that is just, it's ingrained in you, and you have it or you don't. And the reason I say grit is, you're going to come across a problem that's just, it stumps you, and you're going, I have no idea but you just have to keep plugging away and going. And yeah, there's help there for you. There's resources, but you have to have that determination, intestinal fortitude to keep moving the ball forward. So that's the first thing I look for.
Okay.
Number two, I want somebody that I'm comfortable having a conversation with. Because if I'm not comfortable having a conversation with you and we have a relationship,
what's the other person going to feel?
Well, how's that person on the phone going to be doing?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Those are the two most important things. The tech skills, like I said, they can be learned, they can be taught.
Yeah.
So those are probably the tertiary. That's the tertiary. Yeah. Those first two, paramount.
Love it. So as you mentioned, like you're getting requests all day long. The team's getting requests all day long. One of the questions that came up when I asked some others for some feedback on this subject was, how do you help your team measure success? And what they specifically meant by that was, right, I'm going from one problem to the next problem to the next problem. I could be getting beaten down, and then but I'm helping people solve their problems. How do you help those team members keep their head above water, or like, no, we've accomplished things today? Like, I guess that was one of those the questions that was like, that role, like that I'm thinking of that emergency room nurse that's like going from one major incident to the next, and her 8-hour shift ends, and she's taking off her dress and whatnot, and she's like, I gotta go home now.
So
and
it's over.
And like to think about like, have I had success today? And like the answer is obviously yes, you have. But how do you keep them? I guess.
Does it feel like success? Does it feel like success?
Yeah. It's like,
there's days where it doesn't feel like success, where you feel like you've just churned.
Yeah.
But you've made progress. It doesn't feel that way.
Yep.
So we have all the KPIs that we use to measure how we're doing overall as a service desk.
That's true, yeah.
On TVs, around where the entire team can see that. And we're measuring things. How many tickets came in today? How many tickets were closed today? Or they're in their different statuses. That gives you I can look up and go, wow, we're really moving the needle today. My head's been down all day and I've been grinding.
Yeah.
But wow, like we really did something.
Okay.
And then there's days where it's going to be, you pick your head up and you feel like you've been grinding all day. It's like needle hasn't moved a lot.
Yeah.
And that's just because you got stuck in the weeds on a couple tough problems.
Yep.
Celebrate victories. Celebrate the small victories. We're big on rewarding CSAT shout outs from clients. Just walking around. Give everyone a little pound. Hey, you guys are killing it today.
Yeah.
I measure my team's success by my team's happiness. If everybody out there looks dejected and like they want to be somewhere else, I'm not doing a good job managing my department.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a really good point. Almost like these daily, like reminding yourself and the team like daily, like, even pointing out one thing. Hey, our customer satisfaction's been off the charts lately. Hey, we closed more tickets today than we're open. Like, great work. Like these small little high fives, pounds that like keeping the energy there. Otherwise you could have 2 or 3 days in a row and you're like, we really got to change this. So,
absolutely.
No, that's great points. So those are all my questions on the service desk, the IT emergency room, and I think those are good points. Congrats on all the leadership roles. You've been amazing. I mean, I never saw somebody in 2.5 years get so many different positions. So that's awesome, and I think that's exactly what DCS thinks of you. Let's learn a little bit more about Lorin, and I don't have a Disney question on here. I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry. Lorin is a Disney freak. But no, he's running the half. You're running the half marathon.
I'm doing the New York half in March.
Okay.
I'm doing Atlantic City Rock and Roll half in May, and I'm doing the Disney Wine and Dine half in November.
Wow, 3. I'm just trying to do 1 in December. So we'll see. We'll get out for some runs.
We got to hit the boards.
We do.
Long run.
We do. What? One of the personal questions I like to ask is like, what organizations? There's also a thought leader one, but what organizations have helped you throughout your career?
The United States Coast Guard.
Very good one.
Yeah. So I always excelled at school. And, college was always like the logical. This is what you're gonna do. I got bored. Yep. I got bored after my freshman year. Grades were fine and everything. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling challenged, and I figured if I'm not going to enjoy something, I'm not going to do it. My original intent was actually West Point.
Okay.
My parents, so when I graduated was right around 9/11.
Yep.
My parents told me that I would be shot before I made it to West Point. So that got scrapped. So I'm thinking, all right, well, what's the next best thing? Where can I go from there since now college is an option? Coast Guard. Traveled the world. Yeah. Traveled the world. 14 or 15 different countries.
That's awesome.
By the time I was 24. Yeah, real world experience, and then just the camaraderie. All of it. Not boot camp. Yeah, boot camp's great.
Yeah.
It teaches you stuff. Even like the leadership and management schools that you go through there. Those are great too. But it's that real world practical experience. It was being in Japan and seeing different cultures. It was being in South America and seeing different people and different cultures. That really influenced, shifted, and changed my life, definitely for the better.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Good stuff. Who's a mentor or leader that inspires you or has helped you?
So I have two here at Domain.
Okay.
We were a lot smaller when I started. Rashad and Chris both, I've looked up to since day one. Here we are 9 years later, still doing this thing all together.
Yeah.
They have an incredible work ethic that if you see it, you can't help but kind of be in awe and want to emulate that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely those two for sure.
Awesome. Good stuff. We've had Rashad on. We haven't had Chris on, but I think
we should probably get him on.
I think Monday morning we're going to do a podcast in front of everybody.
Very cool.
That'll be
Very
good.
cool.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Be patient. Be patient. Stay the course. Don't rush your life. As I sit here now, gray hair.
I wasn't going to say it.
No, it's cool. It's cool. No, as I sit here now with all this gray hair, my son just turned 8 years old 2 weeks ago. I go, where the hell did my life go? And it's because it was always moving on to the next thing. You talk about all those positions. It's always been, what's next? What's next? What's next?
Yeah.
Enjoy the present. Present's pretty cool if you stop and enjoy it. And, now I'm reaching that point in my career now where I can kind of settle a bit more, it's not as much of that rat race and then constantly trying to move on to the next
Exactly. Thing. Yeah. I mean, I think be patient is the number one thing I've learned. I'm continuing to learn. It's the hardest thing to
not
keep.
Easy.
And it's like, but it's like if I can remind myself when I'm in that spot to just hang on, take a second, it usually works out better. Like a month from then,
yeah,
usually the answer kind of finds itself. A month, 3 months, something like that. So, great advice. And finally, any nonprofits or charities that you want to give some recognition to, shout out to, that you support? I know you're doing all these halves, which are usually associated with something.
St. Jude's.
Okay.
Big fan. My son, when he was born really early, 32 weeks.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time in the NICU.
Mm-hmm. You were up north still at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was up in Hackensack. Yeah, any organization that willingly is helping children who can't help themselves just be better or live for that matter, you got my money.
Good stuff. Love it. Lorin Fisher, everybody.
Thank you, bud.
Thank you, sir. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device. To help us get the word out, share with a friend, leave a review, and check out our discussions on the web at go-domain.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.